life for you. So what I'm going to do, just to kind of introduce the museum to you, is give you a short talk on the development of swords in Europe through from the early medieval period, the Vikings and the Saxons, right through to the 18th century. And the thing about swords is there are loads of different types of swords all over the world. And they've all been developed the way they've turned out because there was a reason for that. And as someone who watches a lot of film and television and inevitably watches a lot of swashbuckling movies and fantasy movies and all the rest of it, sometimes you just sit there looking at the swords the designers come up with and you think, what was in your head? That sword would never work. That sword would be useless because swords really have strong reasons for their design. So as an example, if I were to say to you, what kind of sword do Vikings carry, you'd probably say, oh, well, they're big, tough, hairy guys. They got great big swords that chop great chunks out of people. And you'd be right. That is the kind of swords that Vikings carry. But why did they carry swords like that? If this is a Viking sword, a broad blade, longish blade, two sharp edges, ideal for cleaving your enemy, is this any more deadly than an elegant, lightweight, small sword like this? And the answer is no. This will kill you just as surely and just as easily as that sword will. So why carry swords like this? The answer is because, first of all, of the limitations of technology at the time that Viking swords were around. We have to remember that mankind didn't always have the vast metallurgical knowledge that we have today, the knowledge of the science of metals and how to use them and work them. To the smiths of this period, it was sort of a kind of magic, really. It was a magic they had to get right. They had to try and make sure that when they used iron and or steel to make their swords, that it was good quality, that it wouldn't bend, that it wouldn't break. There was always the danger that it would. And so if you're going to build a sword and you want to make sure there's a bit of extra integrity in the blade to protect you against those failures, you're likely, first of all, to make it quite thick, so it'll stand a lot of punishment. In the early days, if you think about the Roman gladius, the Greek xiphos, they'd be short-bladed swords as well, because that was another way of stopping swords from bending or breaking. Keep them short. By this period, they were experimenting with making them longer, and because you've now got a sword with a broad blade, the blade has lengthened, the sword becomes that bit heavier. How are you going to use it? With a short sword, like a Roman gladius, you're more likely to stab with it. With a sword like this, you're more likely to cut with it. So a cutting style of fighting grows up. We also have to remember warriors at this period would have carried a shield in the other hand as well, almost invariably. If they'd hit behind the shield, tried to move in on their enemies when they saw an opportunity, they'd take a swing. But it wouldn't necessarily be a great long swing exposing their arm, probably quite a short swinging cut, do as much damage as they could and get back behind the shield again. There's a very good reason why this sword is the way it is. Now, if by contrast we look at the later medieval period, when metallurgy is a far better known science and the quality of the iron and steel is much better, then we see men charging round the battlefield in full suits of plate armor. These warriors had only mail or sometimes just padded cloth to protect them. So again, with a heavy sword like that, you can do a lot of damage against mail. You can do a lot of damage against padding. You've got a trauma injury that you can achieve. You can't achieve that with full plate armor. With full plate armor, you can whack away all day with a sword like this, and all you're going to do is take the edge off your sword and maybe break it, no matter how good, how well made it is. What you need is a Swiss Army knife to get through that armor. And that's why this sword was developed. So this is generally called a long sword in our day and age. It's not necessarily the name everybody would have called it back then, although sometimes it was referred to by that name. And you can see now the quality of the steel means the blade is very long. So it's actually not great now for cutting because you've got a bit too much weight there. And in any case, we're not going to cut with it because we're fighting men in suits of armour. So how are we going to use it? Well, what we're going to do is grab it on the blade. Many of these swords didn't have sharp blades. They just had very, very stiff thrusting blades with sharp points at the end. So what you would do now in your suit of armour is you keep low to the ground so you can keep your balance. Move in towards your opponent, keeping the sword in close. When you got in close enough, you'd go for areas like the eye slit, any gap you could see in the armour, or you try and insert it into the armour and knock them off balance. If you couldn't do that, you grab it by the blade and try and smack them one on the helmet, put all the force of the blow through that tiny cross, so it just reverberates through the skull of the other person and drops them. If they were still up, then maybe you'd seize them with the cross and pull them off balance. If they weren't wearing any armour at all, maybe you'd crack them with the pommel. So it's a completely different style of fighting that grows up because the technology's improved, you've got new armour, so the sword has had to change. Now, one of the interesting things about the end of the medieval period, which not many people realise, is in the medieval period there were actually laws against when you could and couldn't wear swords. And essentially, people didn't wear swords unless they thought they were going to be in danger. Most of the rest of the time they went around with just a dagger. So this idea that everybody strutted round in the Middle Ages with a hand on the grips of their swords and made a big thing of it, that isn't true. They saw them as status symbols, but they also saw them as fighting weapons. But then, at the end of the Middle Ages, you get the rise of the middle classes. Men who are very, very powerful, but not because they're military leaders and fighters, because they're financiers. They're people who have money, and they're able to control society through their money. And they want to think of themselves as a new aristocracy that vies with the old aristocracy for power. And they look at the old aristocracy and they look at the sword, they see the sword as one of the ways that they can improve the appearance of having this aristocracy that they weren't born with. And so these people start wearing swords anytime they go out. So you've got a lot more people with a lot more swords, that leads to a lot more trouble. But the point that really concerns us is it's not the same sword as you would use if you were fighting in a battle, because you're not fighting anybody who's wearing armour. So a new style of weapon comes into use, a weapon that we call a rapier. So this now is a thrusting weapon, again, not really a cutting weapon, and it keeps that long length that the long sword had to keep your enemies that little bit further away, but this time, because you can extend the arm, the sword's light enough now with the reduced dimensions of the blade, the sword can be held out in front of you. You wait for your opportunity and then you thrust. And because the other person's not wearing any armour, anywhere on the body it's going to hurt if you get pranked. And some areas are going to hurt so badly that that's the end of you. That's game over. So these may look like less effective weapons, but they're not. They're extremely deadly. There was a period at which some of these rapiers started getting ridiculously long, and that was a fashion, a middle-class fashion idea. And when that happens, they start using a dagger in the other hand. So they can attack with the sword, but parry with the dagger. And that sort of sword and dagger fighting is talked about a lot in plays at the time, particularly Shakespeare's plays. And then the final type of sword comes at the end of the 17th and the beginning of the 18th century. And it's a logical progression. As clothing gets lighter and simpler, 18th century gentlemen were walking around, same as men are dressed today, coat, waistcoat, shirt, pair of trousers. You don't need any power in your attack at all to do damage. So the sword becomes incredibly light. And we get this weapon, which we call a small sword, because it's smaller than anything that had historically preceded it. It's often got a fairly short blade. It's got a really sharp point. The blade is often triangular sectioned, meaning it's got a groove in one side and a rib on the other. That removes as much weight as possible from the blade, so that now this sword is as light as a feather. And you can deceive your opponent, you can make them think you're going to do one thing and then suddenly do another. And when this goes inside you, once again, if it hits the right area, it will drop you, and that will be the end of the fight. They also often fashion items, as indeed many rapiers were. You can see this one's got a lovely brass hilt on it. Some of these were studded with precious jewels. They were covered in gold, silver. They could be very beautiful objects, but at the end of the day, only a few of them were presentation objects. The rest, no matter how beautiful they looked, were deadly fighting weapons. So there you go, brief introduction to the variations of sword, right through from the early Middle Ages to the 18th century. I'm going to turn the swords around now, and in a moment I'm going to invite any of you who want to come up and hold them. But if you're going to hold them, we have to make sure that we all stay safe. So please pay attention to the following safety.